Single mom pays for dinner then Keanu Reeves walks in and changes everything. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments and don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more inspiring stories, or please complete our 1000 subscribers and don't miss the end of the video. It was a chilly February evening in 2018, the kind where snowflake fell gently but couldn't quite stick to the streets of Boston. Emily Carter, a 34-year-old single mom, had just finished dinner at a modest Italian restaurant with her 8-year-old son Ethan as she handed over her hard-earned cash to pay the bill. She had no idea the next 10 minutes would alter her life forever. The moment Emily turned to gather her coat, a hush fell over the restaurant. She glanced up to see none other than Keanu Reeves. Yes, the Keanu Reeves walking through the door. He was dressed casually, with a black beanie tugged low and a kind but mysterious smile that could melt the iciest winter. But it wasn't his fame or his entrance that shocked her, it was the way his eyes locked onto hers, as if he recognized her. Emily felt her heart skip a beat, not because of his celebrity status but because of the unmistakable look of familiarity. Keanu's gaze flicked briefly to Ethan, who was busy buttoning his coat, then back to her. He hesitated, as though debating something profound, before walking toward her. Table. Hi, he said, his voice as warm and grounding as she'd always imagined from his movies. I'm sorry to intrude, but he paused, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. You remind me of someone I knew a long time ago. Emily blinked, unsure how to respond. The entire restaurant was watching now, but Keanu didn't seem to notice or care. He was focused entirely on her, and something in his expression was both unsettling and oddly comforting. She forced a polite smile. Oh, I'm pretty sure we've never met. Her voice wavered slightly as she reached for Ethan's hand. I mean, unless you hang out at parent-teacher conference or soccer practice. He chuckled softly, the sound disarming her completely. Not exactly, he admitted, then glanced at Ethan again. Your son, he has the same smile as Keanu stopped himself, shaking his head as if dismissing an impossible thought. Never mind, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make this awkward. Before Emily could respond, the restaurant manager approached Keanu and gestured toward a reserved table at the back. Right this way, Mr. Reeves, the man said, clearly starstruck but professional. Keanu nodded but hesitated before moving. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded note, handing it to Emily. I don't usually do this, but if you ever want to talk or if you need anything at all, please call me. Emily stared at the note, stunned, as Keanu walked away. She unfolded it and saw not just his phone number but a small inscription. You're stronger than you think. Ethan tugged on her sleeve, his innocent voice breaking the spell. Mom, who was that guy? He seems nice. She swallowed hard, her mind racing. He's just someone who thought I looked like someone else, I guess. But deep down Emily knew there was more to the story. There had to be. And as she tucked the note into her pocket and walked out into the snowy night with Ethan, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something far bigger than she could comprehend. As the cold Boston air nipped at Emily's cheeks, she clutched Ethan's hand tightly, her thoughts tangled in confusion and curiosity. The note in her pocket seemed to burn against her fingertips like a secret she wasn't ready to understand. She replayed Keanu Reeves' words in her mind. You're stronger than you think. Who says that to a stranger, and why had he looked at her like she was someone he needed to remember? Ethan's laughter broke through her thoughts as he tried to catch snowflakes on his tongue. Emily forced a smile, watching her little boy revel in the small joys of the moment. She couldn't let him see her turmoil. Being a single mom meant shielding him from her struggles, even the ones that came wrapped in mysterious notes from Hollywood stars. When they reached their modest 2-bedroom apartment, Ethan ran ahead, dumping his coat and backpack in the hallway. Emily, still shaken, dropped into the worn armchair in the living room. She pulled the note from her pocket and stared at the number. Was she really going to call him? She hesitated, then glanced at a faded photo on a picture of her and Ethan's father, Mark. Taken 9 years ago on a sunny day at the beach. He had been the love of her life. Her best friend, her everything, but his life was tragically cut short in a car accident when Ethan was just a baby. The grief had nearly swallowed her whole. For years she'd convinced herself that she didn't deserve love again, that her job was to be strong for Ethan and nothing more. But now this strange encounter with Keanu Reeves had reopened something in her heart, something she wasn't sure she was ready to face. Later that night, as Ethan slept soundly in his room, Emily sat alone at the kitchen table, her phone in hand. She stared at the note again, her thumb hovering over the keypad. Before she could second-guess herself, she dialed the number. The phone rang once, twice. Hello. His voice was calm, unmistakable, and somehow grounding. She froze, her breath hitching high. This is Emily from the restaurant earlier. There was a pause, and then his tone softened. Emily, I wasn't sure you'd call. I almost didn't, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. But I need to know, why did you give me that note? Why did you look at me like that? Keanu sighed, the sound heavy with something she couldn't quite name. Regret maybe, or longing. Because you remind me of someone I lost, he said quietly. Someone who meant everything to me. Emily's heart clenched. I'm sorry, she whispered. I don't mean to burden you with my past, he continued, but when I saw you and your son, it was like I was seeing her again, and for a moment I felt like maybe the universe was giving me a chance to make things right. Tears welled in Emily's eyes. What happened to her? There was a long silence before he spoke again. Her name was Rachel, he said. Finally, we were young and in love, but life pulled us in different directions. I left to chase my dreams, and by the time I realized she was my home, it was too late. She passed away in an accident before I could tell her how much she meant to me. Emily covered her mouth, a sob escaping despite her efforts to stay composed. She understood loss all too well, the way it left scars that never truly healed. I'm sorry, he said softly, his sincerity wrapping around her like a warm blanket. I didn't mean to bring all of this up. I didn't want to walk away without telling you that you're not alone. You deserve to know that. Emily wiped her tears, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you. I think I needed to hear that for the first time in years. She felt something stir deep within her. Hope, not for a fairy tale ending, but for the possibility that life still had room for unexpected kindness, for healing, for love. Neither of them spoke for a while, letting the silence bridge the miles between them. And as the snow continued to fall outside her window, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something extraordinary. The days after that call felt like a dream. Emily couldn't quite wake from. Keanu's words lingered in her mind, resurfacing every time she caught her reflection in a window or heard Ethan's innocent laughter echo in their small apartment. She tried to push the memory aside, telling herself it was just a chance encounter, nothing more. But deep down she knew better. 2 weeks later, as Emily was leaving Ethan's school after a parent-teacher meeting, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and froze. It was a text from him. Hi Emily, I hope I'm not intruding. I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. Her heart raced as she read and reread the message. She wanted to ignore it, but something in her wouldn't let her. After a few minutes of staring at her phone, she finally typed back, I'm doing okay, thank you. How about you? The reply came almost instantly. Better. Now can I ask you something? Emily's stomach twisted. She hesitated before responding. Sure. Would you let me take you and Ethan to dinner, just as friends? No pressure. She blinked at the screen, her thoughts spinning. Part of her wanted to say no, to keep her life simple and predictable, but another part, a braver, lonelier part, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was exactly what she needed. That Friday evening, Emily and Ethan found themselves at a cozy diner just outside the city. Ko was already there when they arrived. Seated at a corner booth, he stood as they approached, his smile warm and genuine. Hi, he said, his eyes softening as they landed on Ethan. And you must be the coolest kid in Boston. Ethan beamed, his shyness quickly melting away under Keanu's easy charm. They settled into the booth, and for the first time in years, Emily felt something she hadn't expected. Relaxed as They ate. Keanu listened intently to Ethan's stories about school and soccer, laughing at his jokes and asking thoughtful questions. But every so often his gaze would drift to Emily, filled with a quiet intensity she couldn't quite decipher. Toward the end of the meal, Ethan excused himself to go to the restroom, leaving Emily and Keanu alone. The air between them shifted, heavy with unspoken words. "I need to tell you something," Keanu said finally, his voice low. Emily's heart tightened. "Okay." He looked down at his hands as if searching for the right words. "When I saw you that night at the restaurant, it wasn't just that you reminded me of Rachel, it was more than that." He paused, meeting her eyes. "You made me realize how much I've been running from my own pain. Seeing you and Ethan, it was like being reminded of what really matters." Emily felt a lump rise in her throat. "Keanu, she trailed off, unsure of what to say. "I don't know what this is," he continued, his voice breaking slightly, "but I know I don't want to ignore it. I don't want to let life pass me by." Again wondering what could have been, tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. She wasn't sure if it was the weight of his honesty or the realization that she felt the same way, that for the first time in years she wanted to believe in something more. Before she could respond, Ethan returned to the table, oblivious to the emotional undercurrent between the two adults. Keanu immediately shifted back to his easygoing demeanor, but the moment hung between them like an unfinished song, waiting for its next verse. As they left the diner that night, Keanu walked them to their car. He knelt to Ethan's level and gave him a fist bump. "Take care of your mom, okay? She's pretty amazing." Ethan grinned. "I know." Keanu stood and turned to Emily, his expression unreadable. "Good night, Emily." "Good night," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion as she drove home. Ethan chattered excitedly in the back seat, but Emily barely heard him. Her mind was stuck on Keanu's words, on the way he had looked at her like she was someone worth fighting for. When they arrived home, Emily tucked Ethan into bed and sat alone in the living room, staring at her phone. Her thumb hovered over Keanu's number, her heart torn between fear and hope. Finally, she sent a simple message: "Maybe we should see where this goes." The reply came almost immediately: "I'd like that." And for the first time in years, Emily let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, her story wasn't finished yet. As the weeks turned into months, Emily and Keanu grew closer in ways neither of them had expected. It started simply: dinners at quiet restaurants, walks in the park with Ethan, long phone calls where they shared their lives, their scars, their fears. What struck Emily most was how genuine Keanu was. Despite his fame, he carried himself with humility and warmth, and more than that, he truly listened. One evening while Ethan was asleep in his room, Emily and Keanu sat on her small couch, the sound of a crackling candle filling the quiet space. She sipped her tea, glancing at him as he leaned back, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Can I ask you something?" she said, breaking the silence. He nodded, turning to her. "Anything?" "Why me?" Her voice trembled slightly. "You could have anyone, someone who isn't a struggling single mom with more baggage than I know how to carry." Keanu reached out, gently taking her hand. "Emily," he began softly, "it's because of who you are. You've been through so much, and yet you still find a way to smile, to love, to give everything to your son. That kind of strength, it's rare and it's beautiful." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't look away. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm scared of losing someone again, of letting Ethan get attached." And then she trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Keanu squeezed her hand. "I can't promise I'll never make mistakes, Emily, but I can promise you this: I won't run. I won't let fear keep me from trying to be the man you and Ethan deserve." His words broke something open inside her, and she leaned into him, resting her head against his chest. For the first time in years, she felt safe, like she could finally exhale. A few weeks later, Keanu surprised Emily and Ethan with a trip to the beach, a place she hadn't visited since Mark's death. As they walked along the shore, Ethan ran ahead, his laughter mingling with the sound of crashing waves. Keanu slowed his pace, turning to Emily. "I've been thinking a lot about us," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Emily looked at him, her heart Pounding what about us, he stopped. Walking, taking her hands in his. You've given me something I thought I'd lost forever, a sense of home. I don't want to waste another second wondering what could be. I want to build something real with you, Emily, something lasting. Tears streamed down her face as she searched his eyes, seeing nothing but sincerity. I want that too, she whispered. Ethan's voice called from a head breaking the moment. Mom, look at this, shall I? Found. Keanu grinned, stepping back to let her go to Ethan as she ran to her son. The sight of her with the ocean behind her took his breath away. She wasn't just someone he loved, she was someone who had changed his life. A few months later, on a crisp autumn evening, Keanu invited Emily and Ethan to a small family gathering at his home. Emily was nervous but agreed, wanting to meet the people who had shaped the man she was falling in love with. That night, as they sat around the fire pit, Ethan fell asleep in Keanu's lap. Emily watched them from across the flames, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. Keanu caught her gaze, smiling softly. What, he asked, his voice playful but curious. Nothing, she said, shaking her head with a smile. Just this, it feels like a dream. He reached out, taking her hand across the fire. It's not a dream, Emily, it's real. And it's ours for the first time in years. Emily allowed herself to believe in forever. She didn't know what the future would hold, but for now she had love, she had hope, and she had a man who made her feel like she was enough. And that was more than she could have ever imagined.